Lucky number 17. Welcome to episode 17 of From the Nosebleeds MMA podcast. I don't know why 17's lucky, but I'm gonna say sure.
Yeah.
It's lucky today. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're happy to have you with us once again for another episode of our weekly fight talk between me, Brick Harris, your host, and my co-host. Well, I guess other host.
Nah, I don't care. You can call me co-host.
People have said that there's like a difference between a host and a co-host, but if there's two co-hosts, then does it...
So are we both co-hosts?
Yeah, right?
All right. I'm your co-host, Blake Aurelian, and with my good co-host friend, Brick Harris. Coming up in today's show, we are going to be talking a lot of UFC 245. What an incredible event filled with insane fights, champions, new champions, and a whole lot more. Round one, we're going to be talking about our takeaways from UFC 245 and where fighters go from there. In round two, we're going to be talking specifically about the welterweight division and how it is still the most stacked division in the UFC right now, and what is going to happen to all of the fighters that want to get their next shot at the title. Round number three, we're going to be asking if they should run it back at 145 pounds between Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, the new featherweight champion of the world, the fourth ever. In round four, we're going to be talking about fights to make for each fighter that won the belt this past week. Round five, we're going to be talking about this weekend's UFC main event, Korean Zombie versus Frankie Edgar. Then we're going to be doing something a little bit different. At the end of the show, we're going to be doing end of the year fight awards. We are going to be taking a few weeks off where it's Christmas time, it's Christmas break. I'm going home to California. Brick will be moving up north a little bit. We will plan to resume in January, probably right before 246. But for right now, we will be taking a few weeks off. So we want to get our end of the year awards out there and talk about those. But first, the top five that I've been waiting to do for a very long time.
Top
Brick,
fives are back.
We
haven't done top five in a little while.
We haven't. But here is a really good one that I've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
Top five events of 2019 with UFC 245, the final pay-per-view card of the decade being done. Brick, what are your top five events of 2019?
Well, Blake, ask and ye shall receive. Here you go. My top five events of 2019. Let's just say how great of a year it was for the UFC, for MMA. I mean, I personally was very much considered a casual when it came to Bellator and anything outside the UFC. But this year, we really both got to experience, getting in touch with Bellator fighters and kind of just engulfing ourselves in the fight culture.
Yes.
In general.
Good luck to AJ McKee this week.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our boy.
A lot of Bellator happening in the next couple weeks as well. All right. So for me, I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 being the BMF title. And I have to put it on there because it was arguably the biggest event of the UFC calendar year, but it wasn't the best. I don't think it was close to the best, honestly.
Right.
It was a little bit of a letdown in the main event. The hype I was not a fan of. The Rock, just everything about it. Like, it was great, and it
Stacked card,
sure. Probably set the tone for future super fights. The UFC probably learned a lot about what to do, what not to do when building a super fight, and so I'm glad, it's a learning process. It was a great event. Like, it was fun. It was well promoted, well marketed, but in the end, the fights were not what we all wanted them to be.
right?
Number 4, UFC 239, John Jones versus Thiago Santos. Also on that card was Masvidal Askren. Very big moments for both of those. In my life, that was the first time that I ever saw John Jones struggle, right? John Jones come really close to losing a decision, and he didn't, but his opponent blew out his knee. Like, a lot of controversy came from there. And then obviously Masvidal Askren is where the ball really gets rolling for Jorge Masvidal, and the ball really gets broken for Ben Askren. So a lot of stuff happened there. UFC 241 for me comes in at number 3. That was Stipe and DC. A lot happened there. Not only was it Stipe DC, but there was a lot more happening. As far as Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, that was his comeback fight. You also had Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa. Big names, and all of the names that I just listed are still very much in the talking point of everyone in their divisions. Paulo Costa's out with an injury, but Yoel Romero has been talking about possibly facing the champ. Nate Diaz has had his recent come up, which is awesome, and DC Stipe might be having a trilogy here in the next couple of months. So Blake's not happy about that.
I was booing that. They started talking about it at the press conference, and like a bunch of people just started booing it because we were just anyways.
I would have if I was there too. But all right, coming in number 2, UFC 243. This should be at a tie for number 1 for me, because this was an insane event, absolutely incredible as far as culturally, broke the world UFC attendance record at the Marvel Stadium in, was it Sydney or Melbourne? Melbourne, okay. So broke records. It was fantastic. The fights were amazing. Israel Adesanya got to unify his interim belt by knocking out Robert Whittaker. Absolutely fantastic cards. So much fun to watch. And yeah, it was great. Number 1, UFC 245. I have to say it.
So good.
Excuse me. I have to say it. UFC 245 was unbelievable. Possibly the best card that I have watched in a really, really long time. And like we said, it wasn't, and we knew that it wasn't just going to be the main event, right? You had Jeff Neal and Mike Perry was a great fight, and now we have another welterweight contender in Jeff Neal. Other than that, Uriah Faber got... Oh, man, that was a tough watch. I love Uriah. That was a tough watch.
He lasted longer than I thought, though, and so I'm kind of proud of him.
He honestly looked okay.
Yeah.
He looked good.
Yeah, he did.
But, yeah, Petr Yan put him to sleep, and it was ugly. Other than that, every single fight on that main card was fantastic. The Nunes-Durandamy fight was probably the worst fight, considering the action of every other fight on the main card.
Right.
Uriah Petr Yan. Then you have Covington Usman, obviously. Then Holloway Volkanovski. Fantastic card. Loved every single second of it.
Alrighty. My top 5. It's pretty similar to yours. There's a few that are in there, a few that are not in there. Number 5, I'm starting off with a non-pay-per-view. Wow. UFC Fight Night 143, Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw. This was an absolutely stacked card. Paige Van Zandt, it was.
Wait, what?
It wasn't a pay-per-view. It was the debut of ESPN Plus on January 16th, I want to say, of this year. It was Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw at the flyweights. Henry Cejudo was believed to, if he were to win, he would be able to keep the flyweight division alive. If TJ would have won it, there were rumors that they were going to dissolve the division. Paige Van Zandt was also on that card. That's when I found Gregor Gillespie, who is one of my favorite fighters, as well as Joseph Benavidez. It was filled. It was stacked with very talented fighters. Anyways, UFC Fight Night 143, absolutely one of my favorite cards of the year. All right, the next 4 are pay-per-view cards. So, anyways, number 4, like you, 239, John Jones versus Thiago Santos, Holly Holmes versus Amanda Nunes, Ben Askren versus Jorge Masvidal. We had Luke Rockhold getting knocked out. We had Michael Chiesa beating Diego Sanchez. There was a ton of legends on this card, a ton of very, very seasoned veterans who have been around for a long time. And I remember buying this pay-per-view that summer, and I was at home watching it with a bunch of my family, and it was insane to see Luke Rockhold get knocked out and for people to say, hey, he was 1 win away from a title shot, and he was 1 loss away from retirement. And kind of the same thing with Ben Askren. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, the next fight was going to be that for him, as well as, like you said, John Jones, Thiago Santos. We saw John Jones in a dangerous place where we haven't seen him in a very long time. And we also saw the legitimacy of a Thiago Santos, how good he is, and how much he deserves possibly a rematch whenever he gets back and he's healthy. Number 3, UFC 238. This was an insane card, strictly because, okay, I'm sorry, I'm such a Henry guy. I'm sorry. I love Henry Cejudo so much. The way he fights is just so insane. So UFC 238, Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes. The thing that I loved so much about this fight was the comeback. Henry Cejudo came in with basically a broken ankle, a severely swollen black, blue ankle. He comes into this fight. He's getting chopped up by Marlon Moraes. He's hurt. He's stunned at the end of round 1. He looks like he's going to lose this fight. He's going to lose his chance to be a double champion. And somehow, he's able to wrestle Marlon. He's able to strike with Marlon, get in the pocket and go in the phone booth and actually fight this guy. And Henry Cejudo comes out on top. I lost my voice watching that fight from my laptop. I was screaming. I was so excited. That was, for me, one of the best fights of the year. Number 2, oh man. So this is a fun one, and this one actually has a pretty deep memory in my mind. UFC 241, Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic in Anaheim, California. The reason this was so special was we were just kind of starting off the podcast. We were on episode maybe 3 tops. And we used to do this thing. I wouldn't mind doing it more. We were doing some play-by-play. We'd go on Instagram Live and do play-by-play when we had like 30, 40 followers. And we would just do play-by-play and call the fights. And there's a video. I'm recording this episode on my phone to break the third wall, but I wish I could play me calling the Stipe knockout. I literally was do you remember that? How ridiculous that was?
Yeah.
I was screaming. Me and our buddy Robert Jamais, who helps us out with the show, we were losing our minds watching Stipe actually beat Daniel Cormier because Daniel Cormier looked so good. You had the return of Nate Diaz, who looked so good against Anthony Pettis. You had Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, 2 trains running at each other. It was an incredible event. And number 1, oh man, UFC 245. That was a movie, bro. That was a movie. From the prelims, from Punahele Soriano getting a knockout in the first round, to Jessica Ai, to Chase Hooper. Oh my gosh, this kid is so long, so good, so awkward and weird. He's 20 years old.
I was gonna say, isn't he 20?
He is 20. He's the youngest fighter on the card. He is on the UFC roster. He's incredible. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Been doing it since he was 8 years old. He's had the dream to be in the UFC since he was 12 years old. He is absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to see what he does next. Absolute jiu-jitsu practitioner, used his jiu-jitsu. Anytime he got hit, he'd grab on, take his opponent down. And here's the thing, his opponent was talking a lot of smack before. He was playing a lot of games with them at the weigh-ins and things like that, and Chase just came in there, played his game, was smooth, just straight jiu-jitsu. Anyways, moving on, we had incredible fights. The only fights, completely honest, the only fights that I thought, was number 1, the Ian Heineck fight. That was kind of tough. Fun fact, the Kai Kara France fight, Israel Adesanya was there early, like super early. And there was so few people in the audience, maybe 100 people at this point, Kai Kara France, and Israel Adesanya was really pushing for Kai Kara France to win that fight. You can hear Izzy screaming at Kai, and he's the only one in the whole arena yelling his name. And it was just incredible. So there was that. Anyways, moving on. There was so many incredible things. So the Ian Heineck fight I didn't love, and the Amanda Nunes Jermaine Durandamine fight was kind of tough to watch because it was 25 minutes of pretty much just a little bit of sloppy ground and pound.
Yeah.
It was just tougher to watch. I also thought it'd be over a little bit faster because it's Amanda Nunes. I kind of want to see her stand up and strike. But Jermaine Durandamine is such a good Muay Thai practitioner that you didn't want to mess with that. And then obviously one of the fights of the year, Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. Incredible main event. Incredible co-main event. We saw new fighters and all sorts of stuff. So it was incredible. Anyways, let's jump into round 1. Brick, what were your takeaways from UFC 245?
Well, I've got a few. I think the biggest takeaway from UFC 245, it comes from the main card. I don't think anyone on the undercard necessarily is running for a title shot after their performance, although Chase Hooper was very impressive. Jeff Neal was very impressive. There are bigger fish to fry in every one of the divisions that we saw facing off. So the bantamweight division is alive and well.
Yeah.
We saw fireworks on and off the camp. Well, okay, in and outside of the cage, right? You saw Petr Yan and Uriah Faber. Petr Yan kind of shocked me, kind of showed me that, like, okay,
he's a beast.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
He's an animal. What did it say? He had like 70 amateur boxing matches before his UFC
I'm not
debut.
sure. I didn't see that graphic.
It was John Anik. He said it, and it was like 70 boxing matches or something.
Yeah.
And he's a young kid. And then all of a sudden, he goes after Cody Garbrandt in the back.
Cody and him are talking.
Yeah,
that's the fight I want to see.
They had to be separated. Then he, in his call out after defeating Uriah Faber, calls out Triple C. Like the bantamweight division is popping.
Well, not even to mention that, but let's jump over to the next fight on the card.
Exactly.
We got Marlon Moraes and Jose Aldo. Marlon gets the win, but Jose's getting all the talk about fighting Cejudo next.
Yeah, I could see the next fight for Cejudo. I'm hoping for Cejudo it's Petr Yan. I think he's the most deserving of it at this point, right?
Okay.
A knockout of a absolute WC UFC legend in Uriah Faber, an impressive knockout. It's not like it was a fluke. Like he was controlling the fight and then put Uriah to sleep. He picked his shot, chose when he wanted the fight to be over, and that's when it happened. I think Marlon Moraes really got away with one, and I don't think Jose Aldo, whether Dana White thinks he won the fight or the world thinks he won the fight.
The whole world thinks he won it. You should have heard the arena.
Right. No, I saw. I saw it. It was upsetting. Like you saw Jose Aldo celebrating before, and then when it was...
I felt bad for Marlon. Yeah. Just because he got so much scrutiny for, it's not his decision. It's the judge's decision.
Right.
But either way, I think both of those guys are alive and well. I don't think they run it back with them. I think Piotr maybe gets a Marlon or a Jose before to really prove, because let's be honest. I mean, as much as Uriah is absolutely a legend and all those things, I think he does need one more very legitimate, convincing win before he can go up against the double champ in Henry Cejudo. Because as much as Uriah is great, he is also 40 years old. He's not the same Uriah he was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so that's where the questions come up. And maybe it is Piotr fights Jose and the winner of that goes. Or maybe Dominic Cruz comes back and Piotr fights Dominic Cruz. And if Dominic looks as good as as everybody's hoping for him to look, then the winner of that gets Henry. I mean, there's a lot of different options in bantamweight. Bantamweight is really, right there with strawweight women's and welterweight and lightweight. It's just stacked with talent.
My only reason for possibly giving it to Petr Yan is we've seen in other weight classes after a stunning performance and a very clean record, someone gets a title shot. Look at Dominic Reyes.
No, yeah.
His biggest fight was against a washed-up Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
Sadly. And now he's got a title shot.
But bantamweight is much deeper than light heavyweight.
Yeah.
And John Jones has cleaned out. Henry Cejudo is brand new. And so there's a lot of different questions as to who Henry gets next. Also, Henry, I think, gets a little bit of say. And Henry is absolutely deserving of a big money fight, I think.
But I think now with all these moving parts, what with Frankie Edgar, with all these Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes, all these guys coming and returning and leaving bantamweight, there's a lot more moving parts than there are in light heavyweight. John Jones could have easily faced a contender who doesn't have so much of a reputation as an untainted fighter, whereas in bantamweight, it's like you've got guys who have been around forever, and then you've got guys like Petr Yan who are up-and-comers, rising stars.
Right.
My other points to take away from this is Amanda Nunes is not going to be stopped for a very long time,
Unstoppable.
nor will Kamaru Usman. I think Kamaru holds this belt for a while until he faces Colby Covington again. I think his biggest test in the welterweight division is Colby Covington, and will be Colby Covington for a while. It's not going to be Tyron Woodley. He already destroyed Tyron before. It's not going to be Robbie Lawler. It's not going to be George Masvidal. Despite what everyone thinks,
the matchup is different.
Absolutely.
He will literally just smother him, and that's all it comes down to. Unless Jorge starts with a flying knee, but I don't think Kamaru is going to shoot in on a single leg at Ben Askren. Moving on over to round 2. Where does welterweight go from here? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the main event in this round. I think that you're absolutely right. Kamaru looks like the guy, and for the most part, when it comes to that main event, what I saw, I want to hear your ideas too. I had rounds 1 and 2 Colby, rounds 3 and 4 Kamaru, round 5 Colby until the beginning of the end between of those knockdowns. And according to the cards that John Anik released, I think Colby was going to win that fight because Colby was convincingly winning round 5 until those knockdowns. My question is, well, actually, let me get your thoughts first before I jump into this.
Okay, well, I'm probably going to say something that's kind of controversial and people don't necessarily like. So if you're watching this or you're listening, at us on Instagram, tell us what you think. No, seriously, tell us your scorecard. Tell us what you thought just from seeing it, because I'm not so much of a points guy, and I know you have to be when it comes to split decision wins and split decision losses, and that's how fighting works. But as far as who looked better in the fight, who looked like they were winning the fight, I definitely would have given it to Kamaru Usman.
Interesting.
But here, I mean, here's why. Kamaru, I think, was so much more accurate. He did have more volume. He had more frequency of striking. Whereas, and you mentioned this last week. You said if it goes volume, I go to Colby. If it goes power, I go to Usman.
Everything went down differently than I think we all thought.
Yeah.
Not a single takedown attempt, which I'm cool with. But my issue is if Colby is going to talk smack for months and months about you're a D2 guy, I'm a D1 guy. I have more accolades than you. I wrestled here and here and here, and you haven't done that. If you're going to say all those things, and then you're going to be too scared or too timid, and you're going to decide, I'm going to stand up this in the phone booth, and I'm going to strike with this guy for 25 minutes. You're an idiot. What are you doing? Why don't, like if you're really going to do all this talk about, oh, I'm so much better at wrestling than you, and then you're not even going to try a single takedown, especially with a broken jaw? Are you kidding me, Colby? So, just that's all I'm saying is I can't believe that there was not a single shot taken on either side. And yeah, you guys respect each other's skills and things like that, but don't be talking smack about it if you're not going to actually back any of it up. And granted, it's Colby, but I just don't understand that. My other question is, where does Colby go from here? Does he retire? He's got so many other options. I think maybe a Tyron fight after the Leon Edwards fight, but who knows? Maybe Leon Edwards takes care of Tyron. There's a lot of different things on the table at welterweight. There's a lot to be made in 2020 now because of what happened.
All Colby Covington has to do is get one more convincing win,
and then he's back.
He's back in talks. He's not necessarily back in a fight, but he is back in talks. If he were to face, because we don't know, what if he were to face, and I guess we'll talk more about this in round 4, what if he faces a Jorge Masvidal, starches him? He's very much back in the running for a next title shot. What if he faces Conor McGregor in a few months, starches him? Like, Colby Covington, as we all know, is one win away from remounting the hill of trash talk and welterweight gold.
The other thing I wanted to mention really quick, and one of my issues with this main event was Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington and the whole gas tank situation. Kamaru kept saying, oh, like, where's his gas tank? Where's his gas tank? Here's the thing. Round 1, I don't know if they showed this on the pay-per-view. Round 1, Kamaru goes back after getting starched by Colby. I mean, that was clearly a 10-9 for Colby in round 1. Kamaru goes back to his corner, and his head coach comes out, and Kamaru is literally draped, I kid you not, draped, hanging on top of his coach, breathing heavily, panting, and all those different things. What happens in the next round? He gets that groin shot, which was not a groin shot.
That was bad.
Gets a minute or two of that break. The eye poke happens. He gets a few seconds before.
The eye poke was real.
The eye poke was real, but Mark Goddard said, all right, hey, you're done stopping this fight over, stuff. Yeah. But it was an eye poke. You're right. Right. It was. And then as soon as that happens, Kamaru's ready. He's good to go. He gets that extra minute or two combined total time.
There was a turning point.
And there was a turning point, and Kamaru was able to find his gas tank. That adrenaline drain at the beginning of the fight, because you can tell he was emotional going into this fight, that drained him after that first round. He went, oh my gosh, I still got 20 minutes left. I got to find some time. He found some time, and then he was able to come back and be the Kamaru Usman that he actually is. So with all that being said, it was a tough main event to watch for me, strictly because I just had a hard time seeing that. Anyways.
All right, round 3. This one I'm super excited for.
Yes.
Do they run it back at 145 pounds? Does Max Holloway get the next title shot? Does he get the instant rematch after losing his title for the first time in years?
All right, so we've got Zabit, we've got Yair Rodriguez, we've got Max Holloway, and we've got Alexander Volkanovski. Those are the 4 guys. There is nobody else in the featherweight division that deserves it right now. I wouldn't say Frankie deserves it. He just got beat by Max Holloway. Okay, I wouldn't say Korean Zombie deserves it. I wouldn't say Brian Ortega deserves it. All of those guys Brian Ortega is injured right now and coming off of the loss against Max Holloway where he literally almost died. We have the Korean Zombie who I don't think who was beaten by Yair Rodriguez. So Yair Rodriguez is in that talk. So anyway, we got those 4 guys. I think Zabit and Yair need to fight before there's some sort of title contention there. I think both of them are very good fighters. However, I don't think they've proved enough. They both went through journeymen in the featherweight division and didn't necessarily, I would say, struggle. I think Zabit had a more convincing win. But overall, they didn't starch either of those journeymen in the featherweight division. Have those two fights, see who's the better man of those two, and then give them a title fight. In between that time, I think it is Max and Alexander Volkanovski part 2. I think Max underestimated Alexander Volkanovski. Something was off. I think a big part of it was Alexander Volkanovski chopped up that left leg of Max Holloway. And I don't know how well you could see it on the TV. I could see it from where I was sitting. It was double the size. Yeah. His leg was double the size of his right leg. And so with all those different things being said, a Max Holloway that's healthy, a Max Holloway that is prepared might be a little bit more interesting of a fight, which it was already a great fight. I think Max Holloway gives him a tougher time in their second bout together, and I would like to see it.
That was very close for me to being fight of the night.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like right there with Covington, Usman.
It was great.
It was so back and forth.
Yes.
And we got to see the best from Volkanovski, and I think we got to see the best that Max could do at that time, right? He still had a few flurries. He still had a few combinations, some connections that really shocked Volkanovski. And they both are such respectful guys, but there was trash talk in the middle of the fight, and I love
a little bit. They were chirping at each other. They were having fun, but it's very respectful. It's very, they're great.
That's what I'm saying.
So it'll be very interesting to see what happens next.
I think it definitely happens. You just mentioned a lot of names in the featherweight division. Even Chase Hooper with another couple good fights.
Oh man,
is a featherweight contender.
That could be the youngest champ ever.
Could be great.
He really could. I mean, he's so long. So, anyways,
he needs more fights. But
absolutely need 3 or 4 more wins. But
I think you're definitely right with Yair and Zabit. Definitely need to pound it out, and then. In the meantime, give Max and Volkanovski another show. Like, why not?
Yeah.
What does the UFC lose in doing that? It's not like Zabit or Yair is going to say, why don't I get the next shot? Why don't I? Like, they both are kind of in that tier of you need another bigger fight before you can deserve that.
And as much as Alexander Volkanovski won that fight, I agree. Everybody agrees. Alexander Volkanovski won that fight.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily see. I think Volkanovski won the fight more than Max Holloway lost the fight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think Max Holloway was getting starched. He wasn't cut up. Dustin Poirier beat the crap out of Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Alexander Volkanovski did not beat the crap, but it was very technical. It was very smart the way that Alexander Volkanovski approached this fight. And on top of that, we saw that Max Holloway can stuff Alexander Volkanovski's takedowns, which we both thought was going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
So with all those things being said, we can see that Max Holloway can still, hang in the octagon with Alexander Volkanovski. As much as he won it, I don't think he necessarily lost in a way that it's like, oh, we never want to see that again, like a Brian Ortega versus Max Holloway.
Right. No, it was definitely Max was very impressive.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it was one of those it wasn't like a Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman where you're like, what is this? This guy was the champ for how long?
Yeah.
It wasn't a cringy fight where you're like, Max, what are you doing? It was a really good fight.
The better man won.
Right. I think Alexander Volkanovski had a better game plan. And Max even said it afterwards. He's like, I'm 28. Like, I'm going to be back.
Yeah.
Like, don't stress. And
it was awesome.
I think he gets the next one.
It was awesome. All right, round number 4, fights to make for the 3 champions now. Amanda Nunes at bantamweight. We have Alexander Volkanovski at featherweight, which we already pretty much talked about.
Yeah.
And then we have Kamaru Usman for his second title defense against who? Brick, who do you got for those 3?
Well, let's see. Kamaru Usman... It's a toss-up because the welterweight division is moving so much. You have McGregor Cerrone in less than a month. You have Masvidal, who's in this weird, Twilight Zone phase where he's in between. I think the next shot at the welterweight title either goes to Tyron Woodley or GSP.
Wow.
I could see a Kamaru Usman GSP fight without a doubt.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Did you have more to say, or do you want me to jump in?
I mean, as far as we already talked, for Amanda Nunes, I have no idea. Who's next for her?
Aldana?
Give her Kamaru Usman. I don't know. She's gonna beat everybody. I told you. I texted you and said she is the Khabib version of any women's division.
It's so awesome, man. She's incredible.
I know you didn't necessarily like her ground and pound. You didn't think it was very technical and it was kind of ugly. To be honest, that's what I think of Khabib. At lightweight, Khabib uses the exact same technique to take guys down.
It was different.
But it's so simple. It's the same type of it's not sloppy, but it's just not aesthetic. It's not like your Chad Mendez type wrestling where it's like a double leg. It's just you fall on the other person and then Khabib just destroys them. That's what Amanda Nunes does.
Khabib, it is different though. Khabib is a guy who is going to shoot in, wrap your legs, and he's like an anaconda, and he slithers up your legs, holds down your legs. That's going to be Tony Ferguson's biggest issue, is because the guard is so important with Tony Ferguson's jiu-jitsu. If Khabib wraps up his legs, Amanda Nunes wasn't doing that. Germaine was in a butterfly guard, an open guard. She was in a closed guard. Germaine Durandamy just didn't have the jiu-jitsu to be able to fight off everything that Amanda Nunes was giving her. But Khabib's ability to wrap up the legs and literally demobilize his opponents is the reason that he is as special as he is. And so Amanda Nunes, as great as her takedowns was, that's what I thought was the most impressive, was Amanda Nunes' ability to literally go, oh no, I'm in a little bit of trouble, takedown. That was incredible.
Her level changing, Joe Rogan commented on it, her level changing was insane. Like, beautiful. Beautiful.
Incredible.
And so that's what I mean. I think Khabib, honestly, I see them as very, very similar. As how dominant they are, I'd say edge to Nunes as far as striking. Oh my god! Just because of who she's knocked out. Hasn't knocked out any seriously big names, but I just saw it as very similar. It was a lot of overpowerment, put you on the ground, lay on top of you, show serious, cage control, serious ground dominance, and a little bit of ground and pound.
Lots of control. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then, was that all of them for you?
I mean, yeah.
And then featherweight, you want to run it back? All right.
But here's the thing. There are other fights to make, and I think we should comment, and maybe we'll talk about this in round 5 if you're okay with it. Just call an audible right here. I think a bigger talking point, and we can hit on Korean Zombie and Frankie Edgar, but we might not have a show until after Cerrone Conor.
We might not.
So if you're okay with it, I kind of want to.
So I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said, and then we can jump into that, and we'll talk about that. So number one, I think that for welterweight, so featherweight, I think they need to run it back. Amanda Nunes, it can be anyone, but I think Aldana's next in line. She had that impressive knockout.
Yeah.
Moving on to welterweight, which is so interesting. What's going to happen? I think Jorge Masvidal is going to wait for Conor McGregor. I don't think Jorge Masvidal wants to fight Kamaru Usman. I've been saying this for the entire totality of this entire show that we've done for a long time. It has to be Conor Jorge. I want that fight so bad. It would be the greatest striking fight of all time. So Conor McGregor versus Jorge Masvidal. If Conor beats Cowboy, he's going to want to fight against Khabib. I don't think Khabib will ever sign that contract. Khabib doesn't want anything to do with him. So and like Dana said, Khabib's the guy in charge. It's not Conor anymore. Conor beats Cowboy. Conor fights Jorge Masvidal for one of the biggest money fights. It's like the BMF title on steroids. It is so good. Yeah. So we have that one. And then in the meantime, for Kamaru Usman, what happens to him? I think it's the winner of Tyron Leon Edwards. I don't see why not, because Tyron was hurt against Kamaru Usman. That is a fact. If Tyron Woodley comes back in and he knows what he's facing up against Kamaru Usman, he might be a little better. Does Leon Edwards get that win? Yes. And Leon Edwards finally gets, or does he? Maybe. And if Leon Edwards finally gets that opportunity to get that title shot that he deserves like nobody else. Granted, Kamaru and Leon have fought, and Leon lost that fight, but I think they're both different fighters now. That was 8 fights ago, I believe. And so Leon Edwards absolutely deserves a title shot if he can beat the guy who was on top of 170 for 3 years.
Yeah, to again piggyback off that, and maybe after that we can just segue into what we think Conor Cerrone.
Yes.
Here's what I think happens. I think it's kind of unanimous that Conor's going to beat Donald Cerrone. At least that's kind of the hope of everyone, just so that Conor's career can continue. To see it.
Yeah.
So here's what I think, and here's why. I think Conor McGregor is more of a chance to fight Kamaru Usman for a title than Jorge Masvidal. And here's why. Here's why. Jorge Masvidal is not a belt guy. Conor McGregor is.
Yes.
This is, I think, why he's jumping up to welterweight.
And he tweeted.
He's seeing the money. He's seeing everything that's happening. He tweeted 145, 155, 170. What does that mean? He's not saying, I'm going to compete in all these classes. He's saying, I'm going to be the champ.
Yes.
Exactly. So I don't think Kamaru loses his belt to anyone in the near future. I think Jorge and Colby Covington find themselves in a scrap here very, very soon.
That's interesting too.
Because of how tight they were and that falling out, it's like a John Jones, Rashad Evans thing.
It's interesting.
It's a thing, right?
It's a thing. No, it's totally a thing.
I think it'll happen.
I like it.
And as far as Conor McGregor getting a shot at the welterweight title, I think that happens in the next year because
I think Kamaru signs that fight immediately.
I would. if I were Kamaru Usman, I'm not trying to fight Conor McGregor. I'm just saying, like, if I were Kamaru and I saw a washed up Conor McGregor fight a almost 40-year-old Donald Cerrone, that's going to be Conor's first win if he wins. That's going to be his first win in the UFC since 2016.
Yeah,
that's a long
time ago. No, it's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts. Welterweight is so exciting. The question is, where does Conor go from here? Does he go to 55? Does Khabib even sign a contract? Does Conor wait? Whatever the case is, whatever happens to Conor in 2020 is going to be fun, no matter what happens. Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone, like you said, I've got him winning that fight against Cowboy Cerrone, but who knows? Maybe Cowboy wins with a head kick. Maybe he does something really, really interesting, and we see Conor go down, and his legacy is officially just tarnished. If he loses to Cowboy Cerrone, Conor has lost everything. It's almost like, and I don't want to compare Conor to Chris Weidman because he is much more, important to the UFC, in my opinion, than Chris Weidman, as much as Chris Weidman was a great champion and things like that. But Conor McGregor is, again, like a Chris Weidman. You're one shot away from a title shot, and you are one shot away from retirement.
It's a huge gamble.
It is huge.
That's why I didn't necessarily like this fight announcement of McGregor versus Cerrone.
Same.
Because you put McGregor up against a bigger name, and you think, well, he doesn't deserve that. Well, you put him up against a smaller name, and he's risking his entire career on what if he has a fluke loss to Ally Aquinta or another lightweight name that he should be destroying.
Yeah.
And speaking of lightweights, just to jump down there really quick, I don't think Conor McGregor makes another appearance at lightweight. I don't think he makes another appearance at 155 because if Khabib loses to Ferguson, then who's the most deserving of a title shot against Tony Ferguson?
Gaethje.
I think it's Khabib. I think you see either Gaethje fight Khabib in the winner of that, but Khabib has been such a dominant champion. It's like you can't really withhold a rematch.
We can't say what deserves a rematch until the fight's over, though. In my opinion, I don't think you can ever say. I mean, people would say, "Oh yeah, as soon as Conor Khabib is done, like they're going to run it back." But then Conor got mauled, Yeah. And so it's like it's tough to say that you can you can call a rematch before the first time even happens. Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. Nobody wants to see that fight anymore. I mean, nobody wants to see that fight again right now because we all saw Tyron.
It wasn't competitive.
Because it wasn't competitive. Granted, Tyron was hurt, blah, 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 blah. But whatever the case is, Conor McGregor fighting at 70, really, really fun. Conor McGregor
Really
fighting
exciting.
at 55, I just think it's too stacked.
It's just not there for him anymore.
I agree.
It's kind of like featherweight. Like he kind of got bored after he made his rise in featherweight and he did what he did there.
Yeah.
He kind of was just like, I want a bigger name. I want the bigger fights, and those were.
Well, he beat the guy that he needed to beat. He beat Jose, and then he said, "You know what? I'm tired of cutting weight." Boom, 55.
Sure.
So, anyways, really quick, round 5, Korean Zombie versus Frankie Edgar. I got Frankie.
I hope I have Frankie. No, really. Like I would love to see Frankie Edgar make a surge. Well, I mean, does this fight really mean much in the featherweight division?
It does. I think it makes up for the person behind Yair and Zabit.
Well, yeah, but Frankie moved to bantamweight.
That's right. That's true. Yeah,
so
you're right.
Is he just filling in for Brian Ortega? And if he wins, then it's like, oh, that was fun. Now time to go down to bantamweight. Or do you think if he wins, he stays at featherweight? I hope he wins and he stays at featherweight because Frankie Edgar to bantamweight, I don't like.
I don't like Frankie Edgar. Wherever he kind of goes, it's tough when you get older in age and you start moving weight classes.
Yeah.
And, he lost the title fight against Max, and I don't think he's really going to have a chance against a lot of people, but, whatever. So.
Could be fun. We'll see.
All right. Time for the end of the show.
I'm excited for this.
End of the year awards. Brick, go ahead and break yours down. I'll break mine down. We'll talk about it for a little bit, and we'll get out of here.
Okay. First of all, is there a song to intro the Grammys or any other award show?
Not that I can think of.
If not, then we should just make up our own. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, welcome to the first annual FTN Awards. Fighter of the Year. Let me just go through the list. Fighter of the Year, Female Fighter of the Year, Breakthrough Fighter of the Year, Fight of the year, knockout of the year, submission of the year, comeback of the year, upset of the year.
Yes.
That's a mouthful. Let me hit you with a few right off the bat. Fighter of the year, Jorge Masvidal. I think that's a resounding yes. Female fighter of the year, Amanda Nunes.
Yes.
I think that's a resounding yes.
Yes.
As far as fight of the year, Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. That takes it for me.
Okay.
Because of how genuine the trash talk was, how genuine the built up like energy for the fight itself, the fact that it was for a title, the fact that it was because it was such splitting hairs and the fight ended up being so close. That's why it was so exciting to me. Both guys stood and banged, and one guy went to the hospital afterwards. Like so much justice was served.
Yes.
Knockout of the year, I literally might go Kevin Lee over Gregor Gillespie. That was just like, that one.
The life sucked out of him.
Yeah,
man.
that one just gives me chills.
That was bad. That was bad.
Submission of the year, I might go with OSP and his Von Flue choke. That just went viral. That was amazing.
How are Von Flues not more common in the UFC? Because people just shoot the worst guillotines, and I don't see why people don't work that more. So
I just
good job, OSP.
I was gonna say I think it was just incredible how he has kind of made a choke that isn't very common in the UFC kind of his staple now. Like that's his thing. Much like head kicks, you could say is Cerrone or Barboza's thing. Comeback of the year, Comeback of the year, like I'm calling it, I'm going to say it's Jorge Masvidal, like as a career comeback, not necessarily a fight comeback. I don't know if you wanted, one or the other.
I'll break it down.
I was going to say, you'll probably answer these questions a lot better than I will. Let's see. Breakthrough fighter of the year, someone who stands out to me the most. Man, Jorge Masvidal?
This is the Jorge Masvidal year. Yeah. Conor took a break and Jorge became the biggest star.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
If we were talking about 2013 to 2016, Conor McGregor would have taken all of these. Even female fighter of the year, for all I care. Seriously.
Sorry,
would have
Rhonda,
been insane.
You lost. Again.
As far as knockout of the year, man. Oh, wait, I already said knockout of the year. I totally did. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at upset of the year, right? Yeah.
You're looking at some... Oh, no, yeah. Just
I've done everything except upset of the year.
Yes.
Upset of the year, this one goes out to my boy, Tristan Connolly.
Okay.
Remember that fight?
Yeah.
Against Michel Pereira?
Yeah, man, that was a great fight.
The backflip,
and Tristan Connolly just like, nope.
So cringy. And Tristan Connolly just like, he looked like the math teacher facing the kid in detention.
It was awesome.
And he ended up just schooling him. So
it was awesome.
There's my list, Blake.
Alrighty. For fighter of the year, I agree with you, Jorge Masvidal.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Henry Cejudo. I was going to freak out.
No. I mean, I think he's right there with Adesanya and Jorge Masvidal is number 1, Adesanya number 2, Nunes will probably be number 3.
Tier 2.
And then Henry Cejudo and Amanda Nunes would be in that 4 and 5. Female fighter of the year, Amanda Nunes. Obviously, incredible.
Given.
Breakthrough fighter of the year, Israel Adesanya. At the beginning of this year, he had fought some pretty good guys. Derek Brunson was probably his biggest name. He goes on and fights Israel Adesanya. He goes and fights Kelvin Gastelum, and he beats Robert Whittaker. All of those things being this year, Israel Adesanya had an incredible year, broke through, and is now right there with Jorge Masvidal as the biggest fighter next to the name Conor McGregor or next to the name Nate Diaz in the UFC. Fight of the year, Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum. That's still number 1 for me. As much as I loved Colby Usman, I really, really was rubbed the wrong way that they did not go to the ground. I mean, I do jiu-jitsu. I love groundwork. I love good jiu-jitsu practitioners. I love good wrestlers. Anything involved with grappling, I want to see that in fights. Kelvin and Izzy had a little bit of that. And also, I just loved seeing Israel Adesanya, as he said in his quote, go to that place. It was a war. It was will against will. It was the best guy that night, and it was something that I will never forget. Knockout of the year, I'm gonna go with our boy. Steven Peterson, man. That was so crazy.
He was up there
counter, freaking spinning back fist to a spinning back fist, man. Oh, shouts out to Steven Peterson. I love that guy, man.
Stevie P.
Steven Peterson is the man. Submission of the year, I'm going to go with my boy Bryce Miller. Reebok, get him his shorts. My goodness, he is so awesome, so cool. I've been a fan of him since the beginning of the year when I first saw him fight.
Mitchell?
Yeah, Bryce Mitchell.
You said Miller.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Bryce Mitchell. He is awesome. Comeback of the year, Jorge Masvidal. Coming into this year, he had a loss against Damian Maia. He had a loss against Stephen Thompson. He had lost two fights in a row. Goes and knocks out one of the biggest contenders at welterweight in Darren Till. Darren Till moves up to 185. He goes out and knocks out undefeated Ben Askren, the biggest hype train of 2019. And then he takes care of one of the biggest stars in the history of the game in Nate Diaz and looks to continue to build his brand and build his name in 2020. Shouts out to Jorge Masvidal for building at such a late time in his career. Such an incredible story. And the last one, upset of the year, without a doubt for me, it is TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo at 125 pounds. Not only was Henry Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw so interesting in the time because everybody thought that, oh, this might be a wrestler match, TJ's a better striker, TJ comes in a lot heavier, things like that. Henry starched him. Henry took care of business so quick. It was the equivalent of Amanda Nunes versus Chris Cyborg, where it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be over so quick. I can't believe this is happening. The underdog is literally destroying the guy who's supposed to be winning this fight. And not only that, but then to come out just a few days later and to find out that TJ was on EPO, that TJ was on things that he wasn't supposed to and get suspended from the UFC for 2 years. All these different things go to show how good Henry Cejudo is, and it was the upset of the year, and he saved the flyweights, and he's probably not going to go back, so like, what's the point? But anyways, upset of the year, Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw.
Okay.